Hi, welcome back. Thanks for watching this video. I want to talk to you about the 7 strategies that you can use to define your competitive advantage. So what's the definition of a competitive advantage? A competitive advantage is the ability to stay ahead of the present or the potential competition. And so how do you do that? You would do it by evaluating the strengths and weaknesses of the competition, and then you see where you can fill in the gaps or step up and improve in order to take advantage of that difference. You develop a competitive advantage when you develop attributes that allow you to outperform your competition. Now let's talk about 7 strategies that you can use to establish this competitive advantage. Number 1 is a pricing strategy. Competing on price is not always the best way to go about establishing a competitive advantage. And the reason why I say that is because when you compete on price, low price in particular, you have to sell a whole lot of products or a whole lot of your services in order to make any money and in order to beat your competition. You have to sell a lot of them because when you compete on price, your profit margin around what you're selling is very low. So you have to sell a whole lot of them in order to be successful, and even more to beat out your competition. So companies that compete on price are generally the larger companies out there. Companies like Walmart or Amazon or the fashion company H&M. These sorts of very large companies compete on price, but they have to sell a whole lot and sometimes takes years and years to even gain profitability in order to succeed on competing on price. Strategy number 2 is an operational excellence strategy. There are markets that are really crowded. Let's take, for example, the package delivery market. There are companies that compete in this market like FedEx and DHL, United States Postal Service, and UPS. These companies are set up so they have efficient systems and processes that allow them to deliver their packages in an incredibly efficient way. And the more efficient they are, the more customers are going to use them over their competition. So for instance, FedEx, when they came into the marketplace, were incredibly efficient and were delivering things overnight, where the United States Postal Service was taking weeks sometimes to deliver packages. So the United States Postal Service had to get really good and up their game in order to compete with the FedExes and the DHLs of the world. When you compete with an operational excellence strategy, you have to have in place an incredible way to gather data and analytics in how you're delivering your products and your services. For instance, the fast fashion company Zara goes from concept to in-store in 6 weeks. Zara goes to Paris runway shows and they look at what the new fashion is. They'll then knock off or do versions of what that new fashion idea is. They will take it through sampling, production, and get it in store in 6 weeks. It's an incredibly fast timeline for that company and beats anybody else in the fashion industry. They compete on an operational excellence strategy. They get new concepts and new designs to market faster than anybody else. So their customers will know that the stuff they're getting in their store is about as hip and cool and current as it can be. And everyone else is getting their products in store 6 months to a year later. Another example of an operational excellence strategy is Ford. Now this is an older example, but when Ford invented the assembly line, that was a massive operational excellence strategy win. Up until then, cars had been assembled in a single place, and all of the workers would come in with the parts and build a car in a single place. When Ford developed the assembly line, the worker would stand still with a whole pile of parts, and as the car came by them, they would add their part to the car until at the end of the assembly line, the car would be done. Now, today, 100 years later, we're like, oh yeah, everybody does that. But at the beginning, that was an amazing invention, and it catapulted Ford to the top of the industry because of that operational excellence. Now, number 3 is an innovation strategy. Companies that can bring new innovations and brand new products and services to market faster than anybody else have a distinct competitive advantage. Some examples of companies like this are Apple with the smartphone, which revolutionized the technology market and modern life, arguably. Tesla, who brought battery technology and electric cars to the consumer market, or companies like 3M that has done massive innovations in the office supply space with products like Post-it notes. You can also be first, but not necessarily better. Being innovative and inventing new things doesn't always guarantee that you're going to win. Some examples of this are Sony, who developed the Sony Betamax, which was not a VHS tape. It was a different format, but it was the first one. It was more expensive. And the VHS format tape radically overtook the Betamax tape in a very short period of time. So Sony was first, but they didn't end up winning. Other examples of this are Xerox. Xerox developed the graphic user interface, so the basic concept of a desktop on your computer. Xerox developed this concept, but it was quickly usurped and stolen by Apple and Microsoft, who brought it to market in their computers. So Xerox developed the technology, they innovated it, but they didn't really end up winning. Now, failing to innovate can also be the death of a company. There are companies like Kodak and Blockbuster Video who failed to innovate when new innovations came to their category or their space. And by sticking with their guns and what they used to do, keep doing what they always did, they ended up losing market share and failing in the marketplace. Kodak owned cameras and owned film. They entirely owned the category. But when digital photography came to the camera market and the camera category, Kodak refused to get on board with it. They were more perfectly positioned to win in that category than anybody else, and they decided to stick with film, and it really decimated their business. Now, number 4 is the technological advantage strategy. Now, this could be using brand new technology, or it could be using existing technology, but in a brand new way. Companies like this that have succeeded with this competitive advantage are companies like Ford with their assembly line, as I mentioned before, or Apple with their ease of use and the graphic user interface that they got from Xerox, or Netflix and delivering video first on DVD through the mail and then through streaming services. Companies like Square that have revolutionized how easy it is to process credit card transactions. And they took it from, a physical experience in a retail store to a very quick stripe that you could do on a smartphone and do it over Wi-Fi or do it over cellular, actually, to complete a transaction. Now, number 5 is the differentiation strategy. And I love the differentiation strategy because you don't necessarily have to have radically better products or services to gain an advantage over your competition. What you have to do is you have to differentiate yourself in how you do it or how you look when you're doing it. Some examples of this are like Old Spice. Old Spice was like your dad's aftershave. It was a very old, archaic aftershave. And they came to market with a brand new advertising strategy, new packaging. They kept the same bottle because it was very iconic, but they, took a very wacky, very unique, funny, comedic kind of approach to marketing their aftershave with the manliness advertising campaign, which I'm sure you're familiar with. Companies like Geico that deliver something that's fairly, kind of boring, right? Car insurance or house insurance. And they delivered it with a mascot, the Geico Gecko or the Geico Caveman or any number of other characters and techniques that they've used to deliver a very weird and unexpected way of positioning and marketing, communicating the service that they provide. Another great example is the VW Beetle. The VW Beetle, when it came out in Germany around the time of World War II, was incredibly different and incredibly unique. Its shape was absolutely different. It was lightweight. Its motor was in the back of the car. It was easily maintainable by the user. It was completely antithetical to the giant gas-guzzling heavy automobiles of the time. And it maintained that differentiation by maintaining it consistently across time and became an iconic product in the marketplace and incredibly differentiated. Now, number 6 is an information strategy, using information as a competitive advantage. And the example I'm going to use for this is Walmart. Walmart passes information around its product manufacturers and delivery distribution centers in an incredibly efficient way. If a hurricane is coming into Florida and they know that there's going to be a need for hurricane assistance type of materials, things like tarps and water and gasoline and generators and things like that, they will inundate their Florida stores with those sort of products because they have the information of what's going to happen in that geographic location, and they use that information to adjust how they're delivering products around their network of stores. So that's using information as a competitive advantage. Now, number 7 is the adaptability strategy, and I love this one because adaptability is probably the most important strategy in the marketplace today because the marketplace is changing at such an accelerated rate. Being adaptable in what you're doing, how you're doing it, the products and services you're delivering is critically important to being competitive and winning over your competition. Here's a great example. Limited Brands, that owns Abercrombie & Fitch, very early on in their development decided they were never going to have more than, I think it was about 700 stores. Take in comparison Gap Inc., which has thousands and thousands of stores. When Gap Inc. wants to change something in its stores, it's an incredibly huge investment and takes a long period of time to change just the smallest retail fixture in a store or one particular product line or one particular display. Abercrombie, on the other hand, with a limited number of stores, can move very quickly and implement changes very fast. So that adaptability, that nimbleness really gives Abercrombie and the Limited Brands and their smaller retail lines a distinct competitive advantage. Netflix is another example of this. They moved from delivering DVDs to streaming content and now developing their own original content. So their adaptability to the market from delivering DVDs in a very unique way to then streaming digitally movies to people to then developing their own content as well as streaming as well as delivering DVDs and expanding their offering was incredibly adaptable to changes in the market. Now, an additional key point to make here is that companies that help other companies adapt and change can be very successful by leveraging an adaptability strategy or the importance of an adaptability strategy to build their businesses. An example of this are consulting companies like Boston Consulting Group or Bain or McKinsey, who are large consulting companies that help companies make changes or be adaptable in the market so they can compete against their competition. So if you have a branding agency or a design firm or you're a freelancer and a company of one, you are also, if you think about it, in the business of helping companies be adaptable. You're helping companies change. So you are essentially leveraging an adaptability strategy to build your business because that's what you're pushing out and helping your clients do in order for them to win and be competitive in the market. So thanks so much for watching this video on 7 strategies you can use to define your competitive advantage. And if you like this video, please hit subscribe below so you can see my videos when they come out, and make sure to hit that notifications bell so you can get alerted when I post something new or when I go live. And if you need help with your brand strategy, your brand design, or your professional creative career, please reach out to me at philipvandusen.com. I'd love to talk to you about your challenges and help you get to the next level. And with that, thanks again for watching. Bye for now.